Hey, what's good, Maryville? This is Noah Cooper, joined by my co-host Perry Randall here on the Droppin podcast. How are we doing this week, Perry?
You know, it's starting to warm up outside, so I feel great. I'm starting to feel better, more smiles on my face.
You know, the snow's melting, and that only means one thing, and that's more NBA action. So
of course.
We got a lot of NBA action to talk about, and, you know, it's close to All-Star break, so we're both excited about that. All NBA fans should be excited about that. And, you know, there's a lot going on All-Star Weekend. You know, a couple rejuvenated rosters for both LeBron's team and the celebrity game, as I see Quavo and Justin Bieber are now added to the celebrity game. So that's kind of cool to get some, you know, big-time faces in there representing the league like that.
Well, you know, Quavo, he's a good friend of LeBron James, so I expect for him to have some fresh LeBron 15s on, probably the floral design, maybe the All-Star game.
He better have the floral design. I like the floral.
I know LeBron got some fresh LeBron 15s coming out.
I think some customized, you know, some Migos version of them or something.
Some offset, it's gonna say something on the shoes. So I'm excited just to see the shoes for this weekend, and definitely like guys like Quavo, Justin Bieber, Jamie Foxx. Who else? B. A.
We got Tracy McGrady and Paul Pierce up in here. They might try to ball out a little bit because they don't get their name out there quite as much anymore. I mean, Paul Pierce tries to get his name out there, but
he tried.
Yeah, he tried.
Teddy Paul.
But I mean, they don't get their name out as much, so they might try. I mean, the celebrity game, a lot of people don't watch it as much as the other events on All-Star Weekend, but you know that's something that's always pretty entertaining. You got an MVP pick for that by chance, Perry?
I'm going to have to go ahead and say Quavo, just from some of the Instagram videos I've seen online.
And it's all fan vote, too, so.
He looks like a baller to me, so he might catch a hoop or something. You never know.
I wouldn't be surprised if Quavo does, but, you know, last time Justin Bieber was in there in 2011, he didn't have a great game. He was kind of like Kevin Hart. You know, both of those guys never really had great games, but, you know, Justin Bieber, you know, he's got a huge following. You know, so does Quavo, too, but, you know, I wouldn't be surprised if Justin Bieber comes in there and grabs that crown.
Well, you know, someone like Justin Bieber, you know, he's a fan person, you know, and they're in LA, and I think that's a big factor too, just because of who like the fans will be that are going to be participating, watching, and you know, just names. I think that's important. So you know, Bieber might catch some girl fans. Definitely ain't getting my vote. I don't care if he drops 40. He
drops 40. He's getting my vote.
I'm not giving it to him. I'm sorry. I'd be surprised if his team scores 40 because that game usually a low scoring game.
I think his team lost last time he was in it. I think it was like that's back when they did like NBA players coaching the game. So they had Magic Johnson against Bill Walton, I think is what it was. And I'm pretty sure Bill Walton pulled out the victory. So you know, did you hear Bill Walton on last night's game?
I did. I had fun.
It was interesting.
He's an old man, and just to hear him like, cause he played for the Blazers, and then you know, I think he works with the Warriors. Did he play for the Warriors too?
I don't think so, but
I think he
might have.
I think he like worked for the Warriors, something like that.
Yeah.
And you know, just to hear him have like that perspective that I'm on this side, but I'm also on this side. And then also when Luke Walton was the coach, you can hear it in his voice whenever he did the little crossover game. Like he's excited to be cheering on his son, but at the same time, I don't want you to win.
Yeah, man, I like it when they got Bill Walton on there because that's a guy that's always on Pac-12 after dark. So we don't get to hear much of Bill Walton unless you know I don't normally watch many Pac-12 games, for example, but you know I might turn them on. If I hear Bill Walton's, you know, going crazy on some rampage, but you know, most of the time yesterday he kept talking about beer. I think he mentioned Portland Trail Blazers and beer like 7 times. You know, there's not enough beer in this arena to hold these fans down.
Hey, we can't forget about my man Dickie V. He had the Clippers Celtics game, man. Diaper dandy.
He said, "Unbelievable!" when they got that buzzer-beating 3-pointer before the half. So that was nice to hear from Dickie V. So it's always nice to hear those college basketball play-by-play guys and color commentators come over and do a little bit of the NBA too.
Exactly. You know what? Yeah, I'm reaching out to Dickie V right now. If he wants to do a game together, let's call a game together. I'm ready. All right.
We got to get the experience in, as much experience as possible. So, what did you think about that Warriors Trailblazers game last night, Perry?
I think it was interesting. Just to of course, you got the names, but just to see, in my opinion, from what I've seen from the Warriors this year, they struggle against teams that have great backcourts. That's what I've seen, and they might not lose, but it's much closer games than against like a Cavs team, which they don't have like a really strong backcourt. And I feel like this is where really Steph Curry gets exposed, because Damian Lillard had 44 points, and that wasn't all on Steph Curry. There's a lot of switches that go on with Klay Thompson and whatnot, but Damian Lillard did have 44 points. And, Damian Lillard does average 27 points per game. And I'm sorry, that's my boy Dame Dollar. So, I got to talk about him a little bit.
Hey, we're trying to get him on the pod. So hopefully, maybe we can hit him up on Twitter a little bit and he might respond to us one of these days. So we're trying out there for you guys.
You know what? I'm going to start, adding him, while we tweet our show. So hopefully they'll want to listen or something like that. But Dame Dollar had 44. CJ McCollum had 29. That's a bunch of points from a team that, they really didn't have anybody else contribute other than Nurkic, who had 17 and 13. So I just think that backcourt really gives the Warriors a problem. And I feel like if the Blazers had a third scorer that could get them like 25, then the Blazers could beat the Warriors. And I feel like I told my friend Mingus earlier today, I was like, if they had that third person, then I feel like they could take the Warriors to 7 games.
Did Mingus have any comments on that one?
He was like, I don't think they could go to 7, but I had to do his voice. But
that sounded exactly like him.
I don't think they could go to 7, but no, he didn't think they could go to 7. But I think they could go to 7. I don't think they will win, just because the Warriors are a more complete team. They have a more defensive. Their defensive,
roster,
and like their bench is better than the Blazers, but you will never know it, just because the Blazers they're able to make up for what they don't have. They don't have that great 6-man coming off the bench like they used to with someone like Allen Crabbe.
Mm-hmm. So and then they had LaMarcus Aldridge.
That too. Yeah.
You said they're looking for you think they'd be better if they had that third scorer, and they haven't really had someone like that since LaMarcus. And at that point, he was probably he was probably their second best player, if not their best player. He was really dominating that entire series that they won against the Rockets in the first round. I think he had back-to-back 40-point games. So LaMarcus Aldridge, he's the type of guy that could have really helped him out. And now McCollum's really come to his own, because McCollum wasn't quite as good back then, and he could have really helped him out and made a pretty good big three. But I think one of the Blazers' issues and why they haven't been able to get another piece like that, why they haven't been able to, let's say, get a Carmelo like the Thunder got in the offseason, is because of the mistakes they made by their general manager to sign all these, average players to, not that good contracts, to be honest. You got Evan Turner, he's playing for $18 million right now. You got Mo Harkless, he's playing for $11 million. Myers Leonard's out here playing for $10 million. Al-Farouq Aminu's playing for $7 million. So they just got some bad contracts. When Nurkic and Shabazz Napier are probably two of your best, I'd say that's their third and fourth best player. They're only making $4 million combined, and you got Evan Turner making $18 million. That's unbelievable right there.
I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think someone like Evan Turner, who only averages 8 points per game, averaged 10 points per game over the course of his career, does not deserve $18 million.
And he can't shoot either.
How much does Lou Will make? His new contract.
Lou Will just signed a 3-year, $20 million contract.
And he's not on the same level as Lou Will. Not even close.
Not on that. He's not on that fringe all-star level at all. And you see a lot of teams. They kind of made that mistake a couple of years ago when the cap rose, and they had all that money to sign players back in 2016, and a lot of players. I'm throwing out your Nick Batums out there, your Allen Crabbs, your Otto Porter Juniors. These are guys that are making over $100 million. Timothy Mozgov. There's a lot of those guys out there that they're making way more money than they deserve to make just because they got, a contract year in such a great year. I can think of Luol Deng being another one of those guys who he's not even playing right now. He's just sitting on the Lakers bench doing nothing for him, and they can't find anyone to trade for him. But back in 2016 when the cap rose, all these teams were just throwing out these astronomical numbers for these players, and now you've seen the cap kind of settle where it is, and now you got guys like Lou Williams only making $20 million over the next 3 years, when Evan Turner, he's making practically $20 million as it is right now per year.
And I think I agree with you, just because the front office, they made that decision to give Evan Turner a great contract when they probably thought that, this is the direction of the franchise that we want to go in. We want to go a little bit smaller, so we're going to release LaMarcus Aldridge, or we're going to let LaMarcus Aldridge go, and I'm going to go to the Spurs. So now you got Evan Turner, you got Damian Lillard, you got C.J. McCollum, and
making a bulk of their salary right now.
And in their mind, this is the vision that we have for this team. We're going to probably be a fast swingman team that we can get up some threes, but we can also go to the basket, have them slashers that are able to go to the line, make free throws. But at the same time, when they're not producing, then you're gonna go ahead and have to make these changes. But like you said, it's hard because you gave these contracts out to the wrong people when you could have gave it to a good free agent like Carmelo Anthony or something like that.
Well, something I love too. I'm looking over the Blazers payroll right now, and I just noticed kind of at the bottom they list the players that aren't on the team anymore that they're still paying, and they got to pay Anderson Varejao for the next 4 seasons. They got to pay him $2 million a year. So I mean that's just another thing. They're paying players that aren't even on the team anymore. They're paying Andrew Nicholson. For the next 5 years, they're paying him $3 million every year for the next 5 years, and he's not even playing for him right now. So that just shows right there the mistakes the front office has made, and the money that they're throwing out to players that don't even matter for the team right now.
Well, sure, they can give me good $200,000. I'll play.
So I'll pay for a solid $20,000 if they want me to.
Hey, just know I'll play for them. No biggie. All right, it doesn't matter.
I mean, they've just made a lot of mistakes in the past in terms of payroll, and I'd like to see if they can maybe find a trade for one of these guys in the offseason to try to trade one of these guys off and maybe get another piece to go with Damian and CJ, but it's going to be a hard thing for the Trailblazers to do. And I want to go back to the game a little bit. We're going to rewind here a little bit here, and I just want to focus on something you said about the Warriors not playing as good against better backcourts, which is something kind of weird because Klay Thompson is such a great on-ball defender, but I just looked at their games in January specifically, and they struggled against the Clippers, with Lou Williams. They gave up 50 points to him. Mm-hmm. You see they just gave up 44 to Damian Lillard, and then they always struggle against the Raptors. The Raptors hung 125 on them, and the Warriors were just lucky to hang on there with 127. And if you're looking down these totals right here, the Rockets beat them. The Celtics were only down by 4, and Kyrie, if you remember from that game, Kyrie had 30-some. I think he had 36, and he only missed 4 shots all game. The Jazz with Donovan Mitchell, they got 129. They outscored the Warriors by 30. So they have really struggled against backcourts. The Thunder, with Russell Westbrook, they just beat the Warriors by 20. So it's kind of a new trend you're seeing. This isn't something we've always seen in the past, but they're really struggling against backcourt, specifically in the month of January.
And I think against teams like top-tier teams like the Cavs, you're able to hide someone like Steph Curry. You're not able to expose him on certain screens and, have him play defense at the end of the shot clock. And with someone like Damian Lillard, you got to play defense the whole entire possession, 24 seconds. So that's why Damian Lillard is able to expose you, have you dance and stuff like that. So I think I said it earlier, and you're able to give me some of the stats that I was looking for. I couldn't find them. I was looking for like some of the stats that they had against some of the backcourts this season.
And that's just over the last month too. I didn't even look back past the last month because that's all the information I needed to know. They've been struggling. And
I feel like it's really evident against a team like the Rockets. So you got Chris Paul and James Harden, 2 of the top players in the league, and then you also have bench players that come off the bench, is what really putting them over against a team like the Warriors. So I really do feel like if the Blazers were able to get a couple more strong pieces, then they actually might be able to give the Warriors fits, but we'll never know just because of those contracts that we mentioned earlier.
And I did see a stat too that over their last 18 games before last night's win that the Blazers had, the Blazers were 1-17 against the Warriors. So it's been kind of a tough road for the Blazers.
Due.
Yeah, they were due. It's been a tough road for the Blazers the last couple of years because they hadn't beat the Warriors practically at all the last 3 seasons. So, the only win they had was in the playoffs. It was in Game 3 of the semifinals a few years back, and, that's the only win the Blazers have had. So they're kind of due for a win. So a good win for the Blazers last night to stay up there in the Western Conference standings, to stay up there and give them a solid team victory before the All-Star break.
And, I expect for someone like Dame Dollar to continue to have that chip on his shoulder because that's just the way he plays. And I also expect for C.J. McCollum to start to pick it up, maybe have a couple 40-point games, maybe even a 50-point game, just because of the capabilities that he has on the court and just the attention that Dame Dollar brings whenever he's playing. I think them two being able to defer from each other really gets their team going, and then along with players like Shabazz Napier that's able to chip in every now and then of course you got Big Nurkic in the paint who's able to give you a double-double, had 17 and 13 last night.
So there's about a foot difference between those two players.
Hey, they get buckets no matter what size they are, and I think that's the most important thing that the Blazers need to be thinking about. So I'm excited for this Blazers team. I saw something, I don't know if it's true, but it said that they're tied for 3rd in the Western Conference. So the Western Conference is pretty tight. I looked on basketballreference.com, and I think it's just because just a win share. Not everybody's played the same amount of games. They might have beaten the teams that are ahead of them. So they might be tied for third in the Western Conference. And if they are, then that just shows that, every night this whole seeding could change, and you never know.
Yeah, and I just pulled it out. You're almost right. They're only 2 games outside of the 3rd seed right now. The Spurs are currently sitting in 3rd, 35 and 24, and then the Blazers are they're sitting pretty at 32 and 26. So they have the same record as the Thunder right now, and they're just it looks like 1.5 games off the Timberwolves because the Timberwolves have played a few more games, but they're all kind of bunched in there with the same record, and I think the West is kind of wide open. Because if you look off the Rockets, they got 13 losses, and the Warriors got 14 losses. Going from the 3rd seed, the Spurs, who I just mentioned were 35 and 24, and the 8th seed, the Pelicans, they're 31 and 26. There's only a 2-game difference in the loss column. So any one of those teams could be vying right now for anywhere from the 3rd to the 8th seed in the conference.
I expect for a team like the Popovich team just to, I expect for them to hold that 3rd spot just because of how great of a coach Popovich is. And they do have LaMarcus Aldridge along with Manu Ginobili, Tony Parker. And I think when they're all healthy, that's a very hard team to beat, even with a Kawhi out, just because of the sets that they're able to run. They're always unselfish. Well,
I've been impressed most of all with Greg Popovich's ability to develop his younger players. Mm-hmm. His younger players from overseas.
Murray.
Yeah, someone like Deontay Murray, or I've seen Davis Bertans.
Yeah.
He's had a great season this year, and that's a guy that a lot of people haven't really heard of. Jeffrey Laverne, he didn't really have that great of a season last year with the Thunder, and he's had a pretty good season this year with the Spurs. And there's been a lot of those guys that they go to San Antonio and they really find their role in that Spurs system, and it really fits them quite well.
I think Popovich is able to bring those type of skills out of those type of players, because I don't know if Manu Ginobili is Manu Ginobili with not playing under Greg Popovich,
especially at the age of 41 like he is too.
Still, he's still doing dimes, behind the back, nutmegs, all of that.
Man, he almost hit a buzzer beater a couple nights ago. I was like, dang, I didn't know he still had that in him. Like good for you, Manu.
And Popovich is the first. I believe that he's the first coach to ever introduce the idea of resting. The league has taken it farther than what it probably should be right now, but he introduced that, and I feel like that's really helped the longevity of someone like Manu Ginobili. Even when Tim Duncan was playing, it helped his longevity, helped him to be able to play longer, so that when the playoffs
came, or even
came,
Tony Parker too.
And I expect for Manu Ginobili to have a good stretch right before the playoffs, just to help them keep that 3rd seed, because Popovich, he's able to still get the strength from his younger players and have them do good, but then also you got the old people, the old folks home. Tony Parker and Manu Ginobili still able to give you buckets out the wheelchair, so they don't really care who's in their way. So Popovich, you do have to credit to him. I think, in my opinion, he might be the greatest NBA coach of all time. He's up there for sure. He's in the conversation, but
right up there with Red Auerbach for some of the greatest coaches ever.
So I just think Manu Ginobili, Popovich, that's a mean combination.
I mean, if you just look down their roster and see the players that they have playing for them this season without Kawhi, you'd be darn surprised. Yeah, you say who? About every other player you look down here. I'm sure a lot of NBA fans don't know who Kyle Anderson is, or who Davis Bertans is, or who Derek White is, or who Brandon Paul is, or who Jeffrey Laverne is. They got a lot of players on their team that are seeing a lot like minutes, and they're actually giving them pretty good production. And it's all credit to Greg Popovich for what he's done. And for what he's done for that Spurs organization. You mentioned resting a little bit and resting his players. Do you think moving forward in the NBA we're going to see a schedule change and maybe move the schedule down to games in the 60s or maybe the low 70s instead of keeping the season at 82?
I do believe that we'll see that shift. It might not be soon, but I do feel like it's coming, just because we saw it in the lockout season. There were 66 games, and that was a great season in my opinion. We saw LeBron take the MVP.
Well, I love that season until Derrick Rose.
Oh yeah,
then it was pretty depressing.
I do apologize. I didn't mean to bring up the flashbacks, but
hey, I got my D Rose shirt on right now, so I'm repping. Hopefully he can find a team out there.
At least somebody's repping him right now. He ain't got no team right now, but that was a great season in my opinion. Just to see, the players didn't look tired. They played in the Drew League a lot at the beginning of the season,
and they were giving it their all every game too.
And you could really see it. The back-to-backs were cut down. You know, it was honestly, it was just a great season just because everything was spaced out. It looked like the players, whenever they played, they were rested. And I don't remember how many rests happened that year, but it for sure wasn't evident as how it is now when a player rests, because when a player
66 games, that's a huge difference from 82. And you're not, 15 more games or 60 more games in one season. That gets to be quite, tiring on the players. And it was definitely evident that season. And I wouldn't be surprised if you can go down the schedule and there is changes to be made. And I wouldn't be surprised if you move it down from 82 to something like 70 or 72.
And, that's not even including the playoffs, because let's say there's 7 games per round at the max per round. There's 4 rounds. So that's 28 more games than what you'll play. So that's 110 games a season for a team, possibly, unless you're a team like the Warriors who went 16-1 last year.
But even then, that's still a lot more games.
That's a lot of games.
That's a lot more miles for a player.
So if we do cut it down to 60 or 70 games, that's only 98 games and at the max, and that's what the Warriors played in a regular season with the playoffs last year. So I just think we'll have like a regular season with 82 games still if we just cut it down to 65, and then they'll still have those like 16, 17 games.
Yeah, I think it'd be easy to work out something where you play everyone in your division, let's say 3 times instead of 4.
Yeah.
And then that cuts out 5 or 6 games.
You don't need to see those guys that much anyway.
You don't need to see the teams play that much. Save that for the playoffs, all right? And then you move it so you're still playing teams from both conferences, a couple times, and maybe move it down from you're playing every team in your conference 4 times, you're moving that down to 3 times, something like that. Or if you're playing them 3 times, move it down to 2 times or something, because we don't need to see, quite all these games, especially when you have players resting later in the season. So I wouldn't be surprised if I'm gonna throw out a number. I'm gonna say within the next 4 years, I think it'll happen where we start to see the schedule and we start to see changes to the schedule, because I remember a few years ago they said there's no way we can cut out the 4 games in 5 nights with the availability of the arenas, with all the concerts that they got going on. There's no way we're going to be able to cut out the 4 games in 5 nights. And then you see Adam Silver, he worked his magic after David Stern left, and now we don't have the 4 games in 5 nights anymore. So if they can cut out something like that they were so adamant on, that they thought could never happen, then I wouldn't be surprised if we did see a schedule change coming up here in the future.
And that's what I love about the NBA. We see it with the All-Star game. I feel like the NBA is always progressing. So I feel like, like you said, next 4 years or so, we might see a change in the schedule. But I feel like a league like the NFL, you don't always see it progressing all the time. Mm-hmm. As a matter of fact, you might see it digressing. But this is an NFL show, so let me leave that alone. But it's NBA, so, I do expect to see it get better. And I feel like Adam Silver hears the fans, hears the players, and I think you get a lot of complaints for sure whenever LeBron James is not playing and a person travels so far to see them play and they're resting. And I think that really sucks.
Shout out to Adam Silver though for all he's done. And another change is they said there'd never be a 4-point line, and now we've already seen that in the celeb game. So I'm not saying that'll ever happen. That's one thing that I definitely don't think will happen. At least in the near future. But they're at least entertaining the idea. They're throwing it in the celebrity game. You see it coming in the big threes. So there's a lot of changes that could be made to the NBA.
Well, I think it's going to get harder and harder for it to not be there, just because of players like Trae Young coming into the NBA, Steph Curry. Range is getting far, man.
Steph Curry, he started this new movement, ever since
from the parking lot.
Ever since he had his big season out there a couple years back and broke the NBA record in 3-pointers for a season. You start to see players that keep moving further and further out. They got that Daryl Morey system that the Rockets are throwing in, where I think analytics can go too far in some ways. Especially when you got teams starting to shoot no mid-range shots at all and they're only looking for layups and 3-pointers, because I feel like mid-range is kind of like a bailout at the end of a shot clock, and it could really help some players. And you do see that happen. But, I think the analytics can go too far, but in a way you're really starting to see the line just keep going further and further out.
And, these players are getting better. Like I said, the league's always progressing, and players are always progressing, so they're always evolving. We see the big men getting better at threes, so why not the guards get better at threes? And I just feel like they're going to continue to extend their range as we get further and further along the history of the NBA, just because, Can't nobody guard some of these players like Steph Curry. He's got the dribble moves.
When you mentioned the bigs right here, I remember a couple years back, Al Horford would never shoot threes, and now he's fifth.
Spot up in the corner.
Yeah, he's fifth in shooting percentage from the three-point line, and he shoots quite a bit of them too. And I saw that I didn't even realize this really because I honestly don't really watch too many Raptors games, to tell you the truth. I mean, I watch Raptors games every now and again, but I didn't realize that Jonas Valanciunas was really stepping out, and now I've seen he's made 23s this season. And I was reading an article where in the past he'd only made like 2 threes in his career or 1 3 before this season, and he's really stepping out and getting a bigger range and really knocking them down from outside compared to what he was doing in past seasons.
And I think that comes from hanging out with Serge Ibaka. You know, he started shooting threes in Oklahoma City, and you know he saw him get better, and he said that. Scott Brooks, he was really encouraging him to really step out and start shooting that three because he was spaced the floor for someone like Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook to be able to penetrate and kick it out to him. So I just think hanging out with someone like Serge Ibaka, that's really helped Valanciunas' game to really expand because he says he really wants to bring the big man back to the All-Star game. And I feel like he's one of a rare breed of true big men that's left in the game. So, you know, he's expanding his game, but also I feel like him hanging out with Serge Ibaka is going to continue to improve his inside game along with his outside game.
Yeah, it'll be nice to see that, especially with how the Raptors are doing right now and all the success that they're having out in Toronto. You know, now being 3 games up in the loss column for the Celtics, and it'll be awesome to see Toronto in the playoffs to see if this will be the year that they won't collapse because they've had a lot of issues in the past in the playoffs with their star players not performing. But they got a solid bench this year, so it'll be interesting to see if the bench can mesh well with the starters in the playoffs when the game slows down a little bit and the Raptors can really make some noise. But it's almost 4 o'clock here. We got a radio show to get to, so we're going to cut it a little short here on the Droppin' Dimes podcast. Well, actually probably a little long because it's normally only about 20 minutes, and I think we're running about 25, 26 minutes right now. So it'll be a little long, but we got a radio show to get to, so this will be going up on YouTube right after we get done with our show. And for the Droppin' Dimes podcast, I'm Noah Cooper, and for Perry Randall, we out.